What is up, everybody? Welcome to Shout, a Buffalo Bills football podcast. I am in my car. You're not wrong. I'm at the Bills Stadium. We got a lot of things going on today, and I'm coming to you like usually I got to drive home. We've got to deal with the traffic, but instead we're just doing it here, and I am, despite the cold plunge that has entered my life, still soft as Charmin, and I'm not going to stand outside and do this for the next 30 to 40 minutes. So he's Ryan Talbot. I'm Matt Parrino. This is Shout, and we're brought to you by Tops Friendly Markets.
Yeah, and before I get started here, shout out to our friend Kyle with the $20 super chat. You know what I'm going to do with that $20, Kyle? Going to Tops, and I'm going to stock up on meat because it is the mega meat sale at Tops right now. 40 different cuts to you, whatever you want, Bills fans. 40 different cuts. Buy one, get one free. Oscar Mayer bacon, they've got it. 99% fat-free boneless chicken. Tops has you covered. 85% lean Jenny-O ground beef, they have that too, or ground chicken, you name it. Pork loins, jumbo shrimp, everything you could possibly want for Super Wildcard Weekend, they have it at Tops. Head on over, run, don't walk, mega meat sale.
Man, you absolutely crushed that, Ryan Talbot. And thank you to Kyle Gauger. Great content. Much love to you guys. Well, much love to you, Kyle, dropping the big super chat to open up this show. I'm feeling good, man. It's playoffs week. You know, the Bills are set up here, Ryan, before we get too far into the weeds of what we're going to talk about over the course of this episode. It feels like, doesn't it, that this is just the stars are aligned a little bit. And I know Bills fans probably watching like, hey, find some wood. Let's knock on it right now. I don't want to get too far out in front of you, but the Bills are as healthy as they've ever been leading into a playoff push here. And, you know, we're going to talk about the kick return situation, which obviously you'd like to have Brandon Codrington. He's a little bit banged up right now. We'll get into that in a minute. But in terms of Terrell Bernard, huge news, and we'll start there today. Sean McDermott, we're not going to go throughout the process of the week. He already deemed him good to go. He'll be available to play. And if you think about this entire defense, entire offense, starters are going to be available on Sunday for the Bills against the Broncos. And, you know, Amari Cooper, who was excused from the team for a personal family matter, he returns to the team today. I know a lot of Bills fans were worried about that earlier in the week. He practiced today during the walkthrough. He's all systems go. I can't remember a time the Bills were healthier going into the playoffs.
It's been a few years, that's for sure. You look at last year, and they were kind of the walking wounded. They were able to get by Pittsburgh. They get to that matchup against the Chiefs, and obviously they lose that game by 3 points, and you look back and you say, what if? Obviously, they had the serious injury to Matt Milano last year, so he wasn't available. You had Terrell Bernard, who was injured. Rasul Douglas at less than 100%. That list kept going on and on and on, and it caught up to the Bills. Now you look at it, like you said, Matt, they're as healthy as I can remember in the last few years when it comes to the playoff time. So that's one thing they don't have to factor in right now going into Super Wildcard Weekend. They have their full, roster regime for the most part. Like you said, Codrington is someone we have to monitor, and he is an X factor in the return game as a punt returner for sure. But in terms of their offense and defense, all systems a go.
And Cooper, to me, is so big in this matchup. You think about what they went out and brought him here for, and it feels like in a lot of ways a team that's going to play a lot of man defense, man coverage. The Denver Broncos is good at that as any team in the league, led by cornerback Patrick Surtain. Having Amari Cooper available to me in this game is massive, and we don't know the details of the family matter. I know a lot of people have been reaching out. I think it's more just about respecting his privacy and hoping that anything that did occur, things are okay at home and with his family. And then also Jamarcus Ingram, the Bills' third-year defensive back, he was also excused today. He didn't practice because of a personal family matter as well. And, it could be a myriad of things. Like, there's regular life that happens, right? Folks pass away and, people get sick. Like, there's a ton of different things that it can be. And I think sometimes people just might not necessarily want to talk about it. Now, Amari Cooper usually speaks to the media on Thursday, so we'll probably have more on that as we go through the week. But even if we don't, from a matchup perspective, Cooper is going to be really huge in terms of what they want to do in the passing game, along with Matt Collins, Khalil Shakir, all hands on deck, if you will, pun intended, I guess. It's going to be really important against this team.
Yeah, Keon Coleman, too, for those deep passes down the sideline. How they use Surtain is going to be interesting in Denver. because he is one of, if not the best in the business. But Amari Cooper, like you said, they brought him in here for how he creates against man coverage, and he doesn't create the most separation, but he wins those one-on-one matchups, and that's what matters come playoff time. So it goes back to something the Bills said a few weeks ago. They're not going to show their full hand during the regular season. There was a lot that they haven't emptied out of the playbook yet, and now that you're in these winner go-home matchups, it wouldn't shock me if we see some things that they haven't done yet, some formations, some more usage of Amari Cooper. As many solid plays as he has made since coming over, it's been hit and miss. It's been up and down. There was the injury where he missed time. It wouldn't shock me at all if he became a focal point in some of these playoff matchups, because that's what they brought him in for at the trade deadline, to be that difference maker. So it also feels like they've kind of gone away from Khalil Shakir a little bit down the stretch run for whatever reason. Now, if he gets amped up again or ramped up there with targets and looks, wouldn't be shocked. That's maybe the most exciting thing for me, is knowing that you have everyone on this offense ready to go, healthy. You're going to be able to open up the playbook a little bit and dig deep into that bag of tricks or plays that you haven't necessarily had to utilize just yet.
If you're watching on YouTube, thank you so much. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel as well. What are you drinking there, Talbot?
It is called an Aspire Healthy Energy.
Wow. Send me those ingredients, please.
We'll do.
Check those out. Thank you, buddy. I'm always looking out for your health, That's what friends do.
I've been hitting the water hard lately, so.
Well, we were eating those Topo Chicos. They were really delicious there for a minute, but they're not very good for you, apparently. So my wife told me about that. So I want to be careful with the drinks. The drinks are, to me, like, drinks are the thing that in your diet that can really just mess everything up.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Because there's a lot of, like, soda, pop, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, we're getting off topic here.
Yeah, way off topic on Wildcard Weekend.
You did such a good job on that Tops read. It's got me thinking about my my shopping list.
There you go.
Terrell Bernard being available. I think talking about him for a minute is important, because if you think about this defense and where things went wrong last year in the playoffs, one of the big pieces for me was not having Bernard, not having Benford against the Kansas City Chiefs. Yeah. Obviously, Matt Milano was out for the season. And you look at Terrell Bernard, and he's been banged up a couple of times this season, but when he's been in the lineup, it's actually been surprising at, I don't know if I want to call it a drop-off, but if you pull up his numbers over at Pro Football Focus, and listen, I know that the grades are very subjective. He's got 750 snaps on the season. He grades out at a 47.6 overall, 67, which is in the green in run defense, which is good. That's about where you want him. But in pass coverage, he's among the worst on the team at 36.8, according to Pro Football Focus. Now, it's not everything. You go at his season grades and look at a season ago. His overall grade was somewhere around 65, and his coverage grade was almost 20 points better at 54. Have you noticed a significant drop-off just in terms of the eye test watching Terrell Bernard this year?
I wouldn't say significant, but I think being dinged up, being at less than 100% has taken a toll on him and what we've seen. But you've also seen those Terrell Bernard-esque plays from a year ago. I know they lost the game against the Texans, but I think about the game, the moment in that game where he kind of fell back into coverage and lured C.J. Stroud to throw an interception, where he dropped back and made a great play there. Obviously, that interception late in the game to seal the 9-point win over the Chiefs in the regular season, jumping in front of Travis Kelce. Those are the type of moments that you need in the playoffs. The Bills, we talked about this with our insiders today, live and die a little bit with the turnovers, and having Terrell Bernard out there in the postseason is going to give them more opportunities to possibly create those turnovers. So, yeah, there's definitely a drop-off in the stats and a little bit in the overall play, but it's what he brings from that turnover perspective, having that nose for the ball, being in the right place at the right time. That's what I'm most excited about in terms of having him available for this playoff run.
Yeah, and I think you make some really great points there, and I think the splash plays are going to continue, to your point, to be a really important part of what the Bills do defensively, because at times our good friend over at Channel 4, Carl Jones, has been on the show multiple times, put out a great thread over on X today, and I highly recommend going and checking it out when kind of assessing the Bills defense a little bit and where things have gone so poorly for them. One of the biggest talking points all week long from Bobby Babbitt, Sean McDermott, has been third down defense and how the Bills have really struggled in that department. And Carl put out a thread here and how it's not only been bad on third down, where the Bills rank pretty low in terms of expected points added, but it's the third and longs where they've been really bad. And those are the ones, they're backbreakers in the playoffs. And I think one of the reasons why teams have sustained drives against the Bills is because at times they can't get off the field on third and long. And I think that's an area where Terrell Bernard was so good last year because of his opportunistic play in those big time moments, whether it be a run fit in the run game, another or just his coverage ability. But if you think about what we saw from Matt Milano against the Jets, if that's the version of Milano we're going to see in the playoffs, and they can finally start building some continuity there, that to me is another key piece of this thing, because they're still trying to get back to the seamless nature that we saw them play with the first 5 games of last season, Bernard and Milano.
And that's the exciting part. Will it happen? We don't know. But if they can get, in lockstep with one another from what we had seen last year in those first 5 games, it's asking a lot. But those two are playing at such an elite level together. You hold out hope that can happen. And you hold out hope that when Dorian Williams comes in a rotation, if that is the case, that he continues flying around at the ball. The linebackers have been so pivotal to the Bills in these last few playoff runs, good and bad. Obviously bad in terms of how the season ended last year against KC with AJ Klein, not trying to beat up on the guy, but couldn't keep up, was really struggling, and rightfully so. He wasn't really a full-time football player at that point in time in his career. So to have all 3 of those guys, but especially Milano and Bernard in this first matchup, and you hope that as they continue to advance that they get better and better together, it makes it very exciting about what could happen, because, I don't want to get into the stats too much. We have a preview show on Saturday at Wingnuts. Third down has been a little bit of an Achilles heel at times for the Denver Broncos. It's obviously been a big Achilles heel for the Bills defense, and something's going to have to, those two worlds are going to collide on Sunday, and something's going to have to give.
Just respond to some questions here. Thank you for watching on this Wednesday afternoon. Couple questions in the comments about the cold plunge. I've done 4 now at a total of about 11 minutes. They have been awesome. I've really noticed a difference in, I don't want to say my mood, but my energy level throughout the day. The other big benefit is it's supposed to help with sleep. I haven't necessarily noticed that, but I sleep pretty okay anyway, so maybe there won't be huge gains there. We'll see. But the big reason I'm doing it is just the inflammation and everything like that. But it's been good. The first 20 seconds are brutal. If you can get through that, the rest of it is just very manageable. And in terms of the first Ryan cold plunge, when is that going to be, actually,
Ryan? Give me a few more months, and I'll be ready to give it a go, give it a spin.
Oh, you don't want to spin in there, buddy. You want to just lock into one spot, grit your teeth, and bear it and get through it. But I like this idea. We'll make this an event.
I can't wait. I look forward to it. I've heard good things, and the inflammation part, like you've mentioned, is the number one thing here. We're getting older. We get sore. We wake up with aches and pains. It's probably good to at least look into that for sure.
Worldwide Stepper on YouTube would like you to bring that same energy that you brought the first time with the meat read. So it was good. It was a good read, but a little bit of a drop off in the energy. So We'll fix that for next time, Ryan, please.
For Saturday, maybe I'll have a little trick up my sleeve come Saturday night.
All right, let's get into the returner situation. Brandon Codrington, I think, has been one of the more under the radar, steady performers for the Bills amongst all 3 units throughout the season. Like, just some sneaky 15-yard, 20-yard returns in the pass in the return game. He's really good at just not making the right decision. And listen, early on, there was some questionable decision making when it comes to returning kicks and everything like that. He suffers the hamstring injury against the Patriots, and now the Bills are kind of staring in the face of not having their returner, who I think has been a weapon for them this season in the game against Denver, and Denver's really good on special teams. What will they do? There's a couple of options. So first off, on the roster, they could probably go to like a Ty Johnson, who obviously has been heavily involved in the kick return aspect. I would imagine him and Ray Davis will continue to handle the kick return duties. They did it last week, I believe, or maybe the week before. But punt return is a little bit different. I don't know if putting Ty Johnson back there is the optimal candidate. There's a couple candidates on the practice squad. You think about Daquan Hardy, who competed for the job, the draft pick. He comes in, he gets cut. It didn't really quite work out for him. He's been on the practice squad all year. You have KJ Hamler, who had a return during the season. And then you have Micah Hyde, who I think is the most interesting candidate, a chance for maybe the Bills to finally elevate him off the practice squad. He was more of a punt catcher back when he did it for the Bills years ago. And then a little bit of a dark horse as well on the roster. Remember from his rookie season, Khalil Shakir returned punts there for a little while. I don't know if they'd want to risk that because he's so important to the offense, but that is probably an option as well.
And I got to give a shout out to our insiders. Leading up into that regular season finale, there were a few that said, I hope they call up a cornerback from the practice squad. I don't want to see Brandon Codrington out there running too many reps and risking getting injured. And, sure enough, he had to play a lot of cornerback and he tweaked something. And now the status is unclear. They kind of saw that as a potential option. He had a specific role here with the Bills, and with those extra reps that he had to play, something bad happened. You hope that he can go on Sunday because, like you said, he's been dynamic for this team. He's helped flip the field, giving the Bills a shorter field. You've seen some explosive plays, some plays where he was really close to getting it, going to the house. One where I believe he did take it to the house and it came back on a penalty. He's done a lot of good things. And the wins at Highmark Stadium are absolutely no joke. We had a laptop fly away from us a few episodes ago, Matt. I mean, that just shows you how those wins can gust. You have to have a certain talent to field punts in Buffalo on a regular basis. So if he cannot go, Hardy, I don't know if the Bills would trust Hardy. There's a reason he didn't make this team. There's a reason he hasn't been elevated. You could have elevated him and had him do punt returns and play cornerback in the regular season finale. Hyde makes a ton of sense. If you're just going to catch the ball and field it, it's something he's done well at throughout his career. As long as he feels comfortable and ready to go with that. You're still not expecting him to play any defensive reps. So as long as he's just fair catching the ball too, he's not risking any kind of injury. And then Khalil Shakir, that was kind of part of his game early on in his career. But like you said, he's such a focal point to this offense. You're playing with a little bit of fire having him back there. There's options, but you hope that the best option, that being Codrington, is going to be able to go come Sunday.
Yeah, tomorrow will be a big day. If he could practice in some capacity on Thursday, that usually sets up a chance. But if he doesn't go to tomorrow, if he's again not a participant, you wonder if he'll be able to go on Sunday. We'll kind of keep tabs on that. Thank you so much. We're over 1,000 watching on this Wednesday. We appreciate you logging in here. This is our third episode of the week. I'm going to try to bring you two more to get you through the week here. I just get super excited about the playoffs in general. It's a reminder, I think, that all Bills fans need. Maybe not all of them need, but some of them need. Like, the expectations have grown so much for this team over the last 7 or 8 years that it's almost like making the playoffs is just a given, right? Like, it's the expectation when a Bills season starts. It's such a far cry from 2015 and before that, before Sean McDermott arrived and obviously the Bills drafted Josh Allen. It's cool to be able to go to the playoffs every year if you're a fan, but from a media perspective, it's just cool to keep working and covering meaningful football late in the season. Like, I see, friends of ours that are on the Jets beat and the Patriots beat, and it's all, the head coaching searches and the turnover of the roster. There's such a routine oriented approach to covering a team that's as good as the Bills, and it's enjoyable. And now the football becomes even better. It's more exciting. And I think it's going to start this Sunday. How are you like? You don't have to give a prediction. Obviously, we're early on in the week. How are you feeling in terms of how the Bills stack up against the Denver Broncos?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously like the Bills in this matchup for a few reasons, but Denver can definitely hurt the Bills a little bit in terms of how their offenses run. They have some weapons in Cortland Sutton. Marvin Mims Jr. has really emerged as a big play threat for them. And Bo Nix can hurt you with his arm and his leg. So the mobility there is something that to keep in mind. But this matchup itself, I like for the Bills that, Josh Allen going against defenses that sometimes blitzes. Allen's been lethal against them. It doesn't matter if it's a man or a zone defense. You know how Allen is. There's that whole all the different graphs and charts and things that have come out lately about how teams, there was a chart recently where teams played a perfect defense. How did the quarterbacks fare? And Allen was literally at the very top of the list in the middle. Defenses played perfectly against him, and he still produced. He still made the right play. When you have Allen, you have to feel good about these matchups. And it's no knock against Denver, but as you're just talking about, not taking this for granted and how great it's been for the Bills to be a perennial playoff team over and over and over again. You look at Denver, this is their first playoff game since Peyton Manning delivered them a Super Bowl. That's wild. It's been a decade. They've been one of those teams. And yeah, their playoff, drought didn't last nearly as long as Buffalo's, but it just goes to show you that any given year or any given time, these things can end. And obviously when you have an elite quarterback and you have some elite playmakers, younger guys on this team, like a James Cook, as long as he's here long-term, you'd like to believe that they're going to be one of those playoff teams for many more years to come. But it's exciting if you're a fan, and it's exciting covering this team because I also remember covering this team during those drought years, the end of the drought years, mock drafts in November and December, and talking about those coaching carousels. It gets tedious. It gets, you want to be covering the playoffs. So the fact that we're going to both be there on Sunday and hopefully at least another Sunday to come at Highmark, maybe if you're lucky, another one after that, depending on what happens to the Chiefs. So you want to enjoy this run as long as it lasts, whether you're a fan or whether you're in the media covering this team.
Couple more things I want to get into, some practice squad movement today. Yeah. We'll get into that in a minute. But let's spend a few minutes on Joe Brady, because I think this conversation is an interesting one. The interview requests are starting to pile up. Joe said earlier this week that all that's going to take place after this week's game. So a lot of fans wonder, how big of a distraction is this? Well, the distraction will start next week, and it's not optimal timing as a potential Baltimore Ravens matchup looms. But let's, talk through what we think of Brady as a head coaching candidate, number one. If you look at the field and some of the different options that are out there, you have the Raiders job that just opened up. That's going to be a very interesting one, just because of the location more than anything. The roster is not very good, and the leadership there I don't think is very good. The Saints are kind of in the same kind of situation, although Joe Brady has a little bit of a history there. Kalen Kaler from ESPN put out a couple nuggets on Brady's potential connection with Caleb Williams, which I think is really interesting. And there was an insider, I can't remember who it was now, who responded back to me when I put some of that in the insider text line yesterday, that although my first impression was, all right, he's got a history with Caleb Williams. He knows him going back to high school. They tried to recruit him to LSU, all those kinds of things. Well, that could also be a reason why Brady might not want the job. Like if he has that kind of insight and intel into the player and maybe doesn't believe in him as what it looks like from the outside looking in, then that might be a reason why he doesn't end up maybe taking a job. But in terms of the overarching view on Joe Brady as a head coaching candidate, do you feel he's ready? We'll start there. And do you feel like he's going to get a job this cycle?
First of all, I've talked to a lot about coaching carousels and things like that. It's not like Brady's doing this when he's supposed to be game planning for the future opponents. I'm sure it weighs on your mind as a coach, but he's doing it at a time where it's not when he's in the office from the certain hours of game planning. So, I don't want fans to think like, well, he's just going to ignore the game. It's certainly something that weighs on your mind, and you don't want that during the playoffs. I wish the NFL made it a rule that you had to wait until after a coach was eliminated from the playoffs to be able to interview them. And I know that some teams want to strike while the iron is hot and move quickly. Hopefully the NFL eventually gets to that, though, so there are less distractions. In terms of will he get a job this hiring cycle, it wouldn't shock me, but I'm still leaning no. You look at some of those destinations. I know all the ties that he has to the Saints. The cap situation's not great there. There's no good quarterback situation there right now. Why, other than previous ties, which I get it, but are your ties really to the Saints, or is it really to, the head coach that he's going to see coming in from Denver this weekend? I think you have more ties to the coach than you do the team in this case. I don't look at that with the Saints as being a great fit necessarily. The Bears, excuse me. I don't know how the GM is still there at this point in time. And you almost wonder, is this something where you want to be there and then maybe they move on from polls in a year and you have to then try to work, with a new GM where the new GM might want their own head coach sooner rather than later. There's other spots too. Jacksonville, same thing. I don't understand why the GM was retained. It's they have a lot of talent, but I don't love that fit. So I think that the opportunities there are going to be available for him. I just think at the end of the day, maybe the best jobs are the jobs where you already have a good quarterback in place, a spot where maybe you can come in with the GM. Those are going to go somewhat quickly. And it wouldn't shock me if he has to wait one more year.
I do like that Brady said, there doesn't have to be much of a balancing act on his end because his focus is strictly on trying to win a Super Bowl. And I think for these coaches that are still in the playoffs, I almost feel like it's probably nice to interview under this kind of setting because you're so hyper focused on the job that you have to do that it's almost just like a conversation. Like, how much do things align? Do you want to wait for when I'm done with this based on a preliminary conversation for us to maybe see this thing out even more? Because to me, what's so important for the legacy, if I'm Joe Brady thinking about all of this, you have a chance right now in a window of time with the greatest player on the planet, arguably, and you have them in prime years. There's not many offensive play callers that get this situation. And if you're thinking about it and projecting it long term, this is going to be a sustainable model. Like if you go back or if you go forward and look at what the Bills have at their disposal this offseason, it's money, it's draft capital. This is going to be a better offense personnel wise in 2025, just based on that sheer fact. So if I'm Joe Brady, something's going to have to blow me away. And I just think that at this point, unless that necessarily happens, I don't know if I'm willing to leave Josh Allen and this offense and this setting. And you talk about the ties to New Orleans, there's ties here. The relationship he's built with Allen, the relationship that he has with his offensive line coach, Aaron Cromer, who has been instrumental in the success that they've had since he took over. They're a yin and a yang in a lot of ways in the way that they run this offense. So, sure, would Cromer potentially be an offensive coordinator candidate? Maybe. Like, there's a million different things that could happen if he were to take a job. And I know he wants to be a head coach. All these coaches want to be. But the grass isn't always greener. And we've seen it where, got a guy that was in this building 3 years ago, and Brian Dable, the shine came off that thing really quick after a good start. And we see what he's dealing with now and having to really be foot to the fire. You got to find your quarterback and you got to deliver next year no matter what. That's a really hard place to be in. And unless you can kind of fit yourself into the perfect situation, it almost feels like a really good backup plan to just hang out and let this thing keep rolling with Josh Allen.
Yeah. You don't know on a year-to-year basis how things are generally going to go with your unit, whether you're an offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. But when you have Josh Allen, you generally should feel pretty good about the chances of the offense performing well, moving the ball well, and your name still being very hot in coaching circles. So that he does have that working for him. Like you said, everyone wants to be a head coach, though. And I will say that it doesn't take long before you go from hot candidate to out of work like Lou Anarumo. 2 years ago, we were talking 2 years ago, I believe it was, about how he was a hot, head coaching candidate taking interviews, and now he's out of work. And I get it. The defense in Cincy was their downfall this year, but you just have to make sure it's the right decision when you make that jump. I'm sure When it comes to Joe Brady, he's really going to look at each of these openings carefully, and he's going to say, what's the quarterback situation like? What's the cap space situation like? Are there any guys that already fit my system in these offenses? Who, how far away are they potentially from competing? Because going back to your point about Brian Dable, things turn on you very quickly. I know he was retained in New York, but the statement from the ownership said, my patience has run out. So it would not shock me if Dable were let go in season next year if things aren't going well. His feet are to the fire. So, you want to make sure you find the right fit where you're going to be successful, because sometimes you only get one opportunity in this league to be a head coach and you never get that opportunity again.
We'll talk a little bit about this on Saturday at Wingnuts, but I wanted to get into it very briefly here. Before I do that, you should definitely sign up right now to become a Shout Buffalo Bills insider, where the text line is buzzing every single day. Access to myself, Ryan Talbot, 2-week free trial if you sign up. It's $3.99 a month after that. Just text 716-528-6727. That'll get you set up, or you can go to joinsubtext.com/Shout Buffalo Bills. The Shout text line is brought to you by Carrie C. Byer, attorney with the law offices of Francis M. Litro, located at 237 Main Street in Buffalo, New York. If you or someone you know is seriously injured, give him a call, 716-852-1234, or check out litrolaw.com. All right, Broncos versus Bills. Broncos defense, the most sacks in the league at 63, versus the Bills offense, which has the least allowed sacks in the league at 14. Which one's going to win out? And I've been thinking about this question, and I put out a video to our insiders yesterday, kind of talking through this thought a little bit. I went back and watched Broncos Bengals a couple weeks ago. The last time the Broncos had to face an elite quarterback, and Joe Burrow was sacked 7 times in that game. And you look at that box score, and you probably sit back and think, man, what are the Bills going to do about this front? I mean, they fly to the ball. They do a great job of keeping the opposing team's quarterback in the pocket. But then you actually go back and watch the game, and man, Joe Burrow looked like he was absolutely in quicksand, Ryan. Like, I didn't understand the decision-making inside the pocket, his inability to get rid of the ball, even when he was outside the pocket, to be able to just throw the ball away. A lot of those sacks, to me, watching in real time and then watching the game back, they could have been avoided. I just think Josh Allen operates so much better, not than Joe Burrow normally, but in that game, in the chaos.
Yeah. So first of all, you have strength versus strength. Bills O-line, Broncos pass rush. So that alone, I lean the Bills a little bit. But what makes me tip the scale favorably to Buffalo is Josh Allen. Josh Allen just doesn't take sacks. Josh Allen is mobile. Josh Allen will stiff arm you. He will, high step out of your tackle attempt as he's rolling to the left, to the right. That's a big X factor. I know that they do a good job of keeping quarterbacks in the pocket, but Josh Allen is not just a standard every, normal type of QB. He's a guy that can hurt you in a lot of different ways, arm and legs, and, extending plays, not just taking off and running anymore. He's going to cause some headaches, and they might win some one-on-one matchups against that O-line. It hasn't happened a ton this year, but it could happen. But I still anticipate Allen being able to get out of the way and keep a play alive and get that ball downfield, or even if it's a drop-off, for positive yards. It's something we've seen all season. I don't see that just going away because it's playoff football time.
Got over 1,500 people watching across all platforms right now. Thank you so much. We really appreciate that. Boom, boom. Mark Bouchard in the house, one of our insiders. I think Joe Brady needs to stay with Buffalo. I wouldn't want to see the same thing happen to Brady as Dable. Again, sneaking this in at work. That a boy, Mark. We love when you make shout a part of your day, even when you're grinding at the 9 to 5. We really appreciate that, my friend. We'll get into more of this Bills Broncos matchup on Saturday. We'll have one more podcast this week. I haven't decided on the format of that yet. We will see. I'll talk to Ryan. We'll figure something out. All right. Practice squad movement. All right. Who we got here? We got Shadow.
Midnight.
I always mess up the name. My bad. What's Midnight doing over there? What do we got going on?
Just always bothering me during the show. Just
Man, inappropriate. Okay, we're in the middle of we're in the middle of a podcast here.
That's right.
Pops Mafia
Playoff.
said he loves cats. Yeah, playoff podcast. Practice squad movement. So if you remember last week, the Bills signed quarterback Mike White to their 53-man roster, extended him to next season. So that created an opening on their practice squad. And then this morning, as they were probably putting the finishing touches on an addition to that practice squad, the Philadelphia Eagles went and stole Lewis Seen, converted safety, converted to linebacker for the Bills, who I think has been a really nice story this season for them and a potential part of things going into next season. They've signed him to their 53-man roster. So Lewis Seen no longer with the Bills. Got a couple questions about what could that mean? Does he have to be on their roster the whole season? He's on their roster until they release him or until the season ends for them. So maybe that's something that the Bills can figure out next year if he becomes a free agent, bringing him back into the mix. But they brought back Elianku, defensive tackle, one of their favorites. He's had plenty of stints on the Bills practice squad. I know a lot of fans were upset when the Bills released him earlier this year. And then linebacker Tyreek Maddox Williams over Nicholas Morrow. I think the Morrow train, it's just time to pull that thing off the tracks, right? He's been here. He has not been able to find a role. They've brought him back a couple of different times. It's almost like you kind of keep bringing that date to the dance year after year after year just because you couldn't get another date, like you take your sister or something, right? Because you can't find a date. You've seen that in movies, right? The
Yeah,
storyline
yeah.
is tale as old as time. I just think that story is played out. Now, if there's an injury or something and maybe they have to get him back in the building, I wouldn't rule that out. But Maddox Williams is interesting, undrafted guy out of Rutgers. Has had a couple of stops, played in 3 career NFL games, but he's on the practice squad. Maybe they just want to take a longer look at him.
And that's just it. You're probably not expecting him to ever be one of those 2 elevations. You already, you have other guys in mind for those when the time comes. It's a good way to get an evaluation. If you like what you see, you sign him to the future reserve deal whenever the season ends. Makes a lot of sense. And, Elianku, it just feels like he's always told, wait by the phone because eventually we're going to call you back. He's had so many stints here with this team. And the thing that always, surprises me is it feels like he performs well when he gets the elevations, when he plays, but then they're just so easy to put him back on the practice squad or let him go. And there's not other teams calling generally. So apparently the team knows what they're doing. But yeah, I'm glad to see Anku back in the mix. He deserves to be part of this roster, even if it's just the practice squad, based on how he's performed over the years. So good addition there. You don't love to see Lewis Seen go, especially after all the work the Bills have done with making him like a hybrid linebacker type of safety, working at that position with him. But like you said, wouldn't shock me whatsoever if eventually the Eagles release him, the Bills bring him back into the fold and let him compete for a spot next year.
In the comments here, Jose on YouTube asking, will Keon Coleman show up in the playoffs? And let's chat about him for a second before we get out of here, because I asked Sean McDermott and Joe Brady about Coleman earlier in this week. When you pull up his stats from the last 2 games, they're kind of eye-popping, Ryan. 17 targets, only 5 catches. Sean didn't say that Keon has necessarily hit the rookie wall, but he did say every rookie hits the rookie wall, whether or not they know it or not. It's just part of things. And Joe Brady, a couple minutes later, said Keon hasn't hit the rookie wall. And wherever you want to kind of find the middle of that, you can look and try to find it. But I think that Coleman was in a spot last week. No Amari Cooper available, right? So he takes on a more significant role. He's able to fall back into the role where I feel like he's best suited for as a rookie this week with Amari Cooper back in the mix, especially against a good man defense. But also catching passes from Mitch Trubisky and Mike White, that's a big deal. Like that's, to develop the kind of continuity he has as a rookie with Josh Allen, there's a big drop-off, no offense to Mitch or to Mike White. I think that was probably more of an indicator of what happened there than anything on Keon's end. But Sean made a good statement, an important statement. They're going to need Keon to perform over the next 4 weeks if they want to try to make it to the Super Bowl.
I agree with Sean's statement. I don't think he's hit the rookie wall. You look at that last game and all the targets he had. Mike White was off the mark with his passes. A lot of Trubisky throws, the velocity wasn't there, the placement wasn't there that he gets from Josh Allen. The sideline ball that he hauled in was too far out of bounds. All those little things factor up to an unproductive day at the office with a lot of targets. Throw Josh Allen back in that mix, get him some of those looks down the field, and I think he's going to be A-okay. That game against the Jets, he had a long reception that was negated by a penalty. He made the touchdown grab over two defenders, or over a defender, and there's another one in the vicinity. He's not going to be that guy that I think is going to lead the team in targets in any of these playoff games. But as long as he sprinkles in 2 or 3 plays a game, and that can just be blocking 2 downfield on a big play, the Bills are going to be perfectly fine with his production come playoff time.
Speaking of sprinkling something in, you should sprinkle in a couple ingredients on your trip to Tops this weekend. Okay, you got to get set up for Slider Sunday. They got you covered. They will elevate your food game and let you be the real MVP on Sunday with a great selection of custom cakes, desserts, pizza, sandwiches, fresh fruit, cheese trays, fried chicken, and so much more. Save time and easily shop with the convenience of no fee pickup on all game day deals. No service fees, no tips, just the best deals in town. And of course, Slider Sunday, have it your way with King's Hawaiian at Tops. Every Sunday, an opportunity to enjoy delicious sliders made your way. Vote for your favorite slider weekly for a chance to win tickets to the big game. Grab your favorite King's Hawaiian products from Tops and craft the ultimate sliders to make your Sunday even more special. All right, Ryan Talbot, that'll do it for this one. We will be back later this week. Don't forget, this Saturday night, we're going to be at Wingnuts. 6 p.m. is usually when we arrive. Show will go down at 7 p.m. We'll preview Bills versus Broncos. Then we will hang out, watch a little Steelers Ravens, talk some Bills, eat some wings, drink some beers. It's going to be a great time. See you all then. Take care, everybody.